everyone, and welcome to Learning Kitchen Live. I am Beth Kitzis, one of your registered dietitians here at Community Servings, and welcome to our fourth class. Today we are going to talk about what to do with all that produce, beautiful summer produce, and perhaps not so summery produce that is just going bad. And in general, I kind of just want to talk about ways to avoid wasted food and why that's a big problem for us these days. So I'm going to be making two recipes. One is using some of our really summery vegetables. I've got these beautiful tomatoes. You may have, if you get a CSA, you probably are full of tomatoes right now, but also these guys, the cucumbers, are coming out like gangbusters right now, and you might be thinking, what else can I make with cucumbers? And a red pepper as well. So this is the kind of dish that you could also add some other things to, like the fennel that Jessica used last week, but we're gonna make this beautiful cold soup, so combating some of this hot weather. And then we're gonna flip over to the other side of the kitchen afterwards, and we're gonna use some rotting bananas and talk about what to do. These are maybe the grossest bananas I've ever seen, but we're gonna make something beautiful out of them. So the reason I really want to talk about wasting food is that the average American household really wastes like almost about a pound of food per day. So if you think about that, that's over 300 pounds of foods that each household is throwing out. And where is it going? It's just sitting in landfills, rotting, taking up space. So I want to talk about a couple of things. I want to talk about what to do to prevent it, what to do when you have produce that's going bad, and sort of some statistics about why this is such a problem for us. So the first thing I'm going to start talking about is fruits and vegetables. So one way to prevent fruits and vegetables from going bad, and I'm going to start getting my tomatoes ready while I talk about this. One way to prevent them is you don't want to wash fruits and vegetables before you're ready to eat them. So especially things like berries and apples and lettuces and things like that. When we wash them first, then it causes them to go bad more quickly. So you want to wash things as you're going to eat them. But if you know you're going to eat the lettuce that night, then of course that's okay if you come home. And so again, if you're just joining us live now, my name is Beth Kitzis, and I'm coming to you live from the Community Servings Learning Kitchen. And so I'm talking about wasting food and trying not to waste food. So I'm going to take these tomatoes and I'm going to start chopping them up to make the gazpacho. I don't have to do too much to them because I'm going to let my food processor or the blender do the work. So we're just going to cut them. These are pretty small. These are Roma tomatoes. So I'm just going to cut them into quarters. So one of the other ways that you can prevent produce from going bad too quickly is to not store certain fruits and vegetables together or like in bags and things like that. So a lot of fruits and vegetables give off ethylene gas. So they basically have their own things that ripen the fruits after they come off the tree. So that includes things like bananas, apples, stone fruit like peaches and pears. So those are the things that ripen after they're off the tree. So you don't want to store those things with other fruits and vegetables because they're going to emit their ethylene gas and they're going to cause other things to go bad. So on the flip side, if you have something that you're trying to ripen quickly, you could put it in a bag with a banana or an apple or something like that that helps it go get ripe quickly. But today we're talking about not going ripe too quickly. So you never want to store like a bag of apples out on the counter or bananas in a bag. Like if you buy a big bunch of bananas at Costco, they always come in a plastic bag. You want to, when you get home, you want to take those out right away so that they don't cause themselves to go bad more quickly. So that's one way to prevent it. Of course, we also want to make sure that we're not overbuying. So it is tempting sometimes to buy that big container of the greens, especially when they look so good and we're trying to eat really healthy food. But it's much better to buy things in smaller containers unless we know for sure that we're going to get through all those greens. Because I know from personal experience, in my house, sometimes I buy a big tub of greens thinking that everyone's going to eat salads all week, and that doesn't always happen. And I end up throwing like half of that container out because it goes bad pretty quickly. So if you find you're not able to get through things like that, it's best not to buy it in the first place. So I've got my tomato almost all chopped up. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put about half of this in to get really saucy, And then the other half of it is going to get chopped up and kind of added later so that it's more chunky. So to that, I'm going to add a cucumber, and we're going to save a little bit of this cucumber as well to be a garnish on top. So maybe just about that much to garnish the top, and the rest we'll just chop up. And you want to just scrape the seeds out. So you can use one of those hothouse cucumbers that doesn't have seeds, but if you're using one like this that usually comes from your CSA, you want to just get rid of some of the seeds, and you don't have to peel it. You can just use the whole thing. Okay. So chop that up, and then we've got our red pepper. So if we're talking about, what can we do with produce before it goes bad, there are the usual suspects like banana bread, zucchini bread, pancakes like we're going to make today. But there's all kinds of things you can also do with produce as it's about to go bad. So you can make, if you have carrots and celery and onions that are just sitting around, you can make soups or stocks and put those in the freezer. You can make smoothies with fruit that's about to go bad, and greens. If you find you have some greens that are looking a little wilty and wouldn't be great in a recipe, but no one would really notice that in a smoothie, so that's another great thing to do with some rotting produce. You can also make different, bake with them, make ice cream flavors with rotting produce. And another thing you can do is if you do find that you've bought too much, especially of greens or herbs, like say you buy a big bunch of cilantro to make some guacamole and you're only going to use a little handful of it, instead of wasting the rest of the cilantro, you can put it in your freezer for the next time. So I'm actually going to upload a little chart that talks about ways to store produce and the best ways to freeze things and stuff like that, so it can give you some guidelines. Okay, so we're going to start getting everything in. So I'm going to put about half of my tomatoes in here. Hopefully we have enough space. These are some big veggies. Maybe we'll save some peppers for a garnish too. So we'll put those guys in. And then the cucumber. So I'm going to see if I can do this in a batch because I'm not sure that this is all going to fit in. So we'll get this going. So be a little noisy for a sec. I think I need to take some. So now that we're starting to get some room in there, I'm going to add the rest of my cucumber here and some herbs and some salt and an onion. So I have one onion that I've chopped up. This one was really big, so I'm only going to use about half of it. And then a clove or two of garlic. If you like food really garlicky, definitely add more, but we'll start with one here. I'm just going to cut it up into a few chunks, but again, I'm going to let my food processor do all the work. And then we've got some basil. So this was grown in our community servings herb garden. You can use fresh basil. You can also add other herbs too if you like oregano or thyme. And then I'm just going to add some salt, about 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And then I've got some sherry vinegar, and this is just going to give it some nice acidity and a little punch to it. You can also use red wine vinegar. I think even balsamic vinegar would work pretty well in here. Or if you can leave it out if you don't have it, but it definitely gives it a little zesty punch. So try to get this all down in there. Chunky. chunky still. So I may not even need to add the rest of my tomatoes, but if you wanted to add a little extra body to it, you could add some more tomatoes. And you can see this one little basil refused to go in with all his friends, but it's a nice chunky soup. And so then you just, the way you would serve this is you would put some in a bowl. And you can see all those beautiful colors in there. So you might want to add a little water too if you like it to be a little less chunky. And then to top it off, we'll just add some chopped fresh cucumber. And some chopped red peppers. And there, this would have been a perfect meal for this week where it was so hot in Boston. So that's that. So now we're gonna switch gears to the other side of our kitchen and talk about the banana pancakes. So, like I said, bananas give off ethylene gas. Now, if I saw these bananas rotting in my kitchen, I would probably think to throw them out, but truthfully, they're still really good. So I only need 2 of them today. You can see they're nice and soft, and when they get like this, they have like a concentrated sugar content. So they're gonna be really sweet. They're gonna be the base of the pancakes, and they're gonna make our pancakes themselves really, really, really sweet. But you can see how, you know, gooky and jammy they are. So no one would really probably want to eat those, but they're great for baking. But other things you can do with bananas is freeze them. So if you have too many bananas or you feel like they're gonna go right before you can eat them and you don't want to bake with them, what I like to do is cut them up into little chunks and put them in a plastic bag so that and then put them in the freezer so that when you want to make a smoothie, and if you're trying to rescue all your other produce, you have just little chunks of banana that you can just go get at the ready. So let me just grab a fork to mash those up. Okay. So, talking about wasted food is something that has become sort of more appropriate right now because people have either worried about food shortages or there have been some shortages in the grocery store. We've seen a lot of problems with the supply chain, like people not being able to get meat when they want to through this pandemic. But really, this is something that we should all be thinking about all the time. And the reason for that is that food waste is one of the largest producers of greenhouse gases. So if you think about all the food sitting in landfills, it's emitting all those greenhouse gases, and basically it's like having the 3rd largest country, so right behind the US and China, would be food waste, creating greenhouse gases. So that's like a lot, that's pretty significant to think about. So we really do need to be thinking about the amount of food that we're throwing out to try to avoid this and reverse some of the problems that we're having from greenhouse gases. So you can see how easily and beautifully that mashed up. So these are going to be really simple. So you can make this completely vegan by using a plant-based milk, or you can just use regular cow's milk, which is what I have here. I think this would be really good with coconut milk or some almond milk, but you can use whatever you like. We'll just mix those together. And then to that, I am going to add a cup of whole wheat flour. But if you don't want to use flour, like perhaps you want to make it gluten-free or you want to do it with all oats, you can also take a cup of the oats and blend them up either in a spice grinder or in a food processor and make oat flour and use that instead of the whole wheat flour. So these are not going to be gluten-free, but you could completely do that. And if you're just joining us live, again, my name is Beth Kitzis. I am a registered dietitian here at Community Servings. And today we are talking about ways to use up produce before it goes bad. Okay, so now to that, I'm going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking powder. So you just want to make sure you get that evenly distributed. And then some salt. So about 3/4 of a teaspoon or so of salt. Doesn't have to be exact. And then also a 1/2 cup of oats. we'll just add those in. I'm just gonna eyeball it, but you can use either quick cooking or the rolled oats. So we'll just get that all together, and it makes a bit of a thick batter, but you can see basically it's just flour, oats, some liquid, and the bananas. So we're gonna get our pan going here. Whoops, wrong burner. So another thing to think about is all that food waste that's sitting in landfills is the equivalent to about 37 million cars being on the road. So that's another way to think about it. So if we took 37 million cars off the roads in the US, that would be about the same as getting rid of what all the food rotting in our landfills is doing. So that's, to me, pretty significant. So our pan is heating. We just want to make sure that it's hot enough before we add a little bit of oil. These are probably going to stick a little bit. And I'm just going to grab a measuring cup from here. So you want to make these pancakes about a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup size. I have just some canola oil here. Get that in. So another reason that we, on a personal level, that we don't want to let so much produce go to waste is that it's, of course, saving us money if we don't do that. So I didn't throw out these bananas. I turned them into another meal. So I may have saved myself some money there, but also, planning ahead. So one of the best ways to not have produce and food that's going to waste is to really plan ahead. So that's sometimes easier said than done. I know, especially lately, like I can't really think about what we want to have for dinner. I can't always plan who's going to be home, but kind of having a general idea of what your meals for the week might look like. I think I talked a little bit about this with my snacking video a couple weeks ago, but the same goes for planning when it comes to meals. Is if you really have a good solid plan, you know what produce you're going to need each week. It helps you really hone in on what you need when you go to the grocery store rather than just kind of looking around and seeing what looks good. And you know what? I just realized I don't have a spatula to flip this pancake. Alright, so and then what I'm going to do, you can add the chocolate chips straight into the batter, but I'm going to just sprinkle them in. You don't have to put chocolate chips in these at all if you are trying to keep them healthier, but I know if I make pancakes without chocolate chips, my kids wonder where they are. And so that's just going to cook for about 2 or 3 minutes on this side. My heat might be a little high, so I'm going to lower it. And the way you know a pancake is done is it starts to look a little dry around the edges, and then sometimes bubbles come up through the bottom. So this one is cooking a little fast, and so I'm going to need to flip it soon. I think my heat is a little bit too high still. Now I'm off. Here we go. So other ways to really avoid wasting produce is by, shopping in your cabinets first too. So if I came home and I was like, I can't think of anything to make for dinner, rather than going straight to the grocery store, I might shop in my cabinets first and see what I have and kind of piece together some meals. Yeah, you can see that one. That one burnt a little bit. Sometimes the first pancake is for the dog. So we'll get rid of that in a second. We'll still good. We like to call that caramelization. So I'm going to pull this one out and we'll start with the next one. But if you wanted to this could make a pretty healthy dinner if I served it with some fruit, maybe some cut up fruit on top, or maybe even a little side salad. So even rotting bananas can make a decent dinner. Alright, so not the most beautiful one, but the next one we'll get right. So I don't know about you, but I always mess up the very first pancake in a batch. So, alright, so we'll put some chocolate chips in these guys. So if you're looking for suggestions, drop a comment in the comment section or let us know with a question If you have something that you're trying to use up and you need some suggestions, my go-tos in general for produce when they're going bad are always smoothies, soups, and baking. Those are always the best things. But as you can see, we can make a fresh meal here. Wow, this is just burning. No, that one's okay. I'll turn this down again. Sometimes my industrial oven, the industrial equipment here is not the same as cooking at home, so I got to get used to some of this stuff a little bit. And if you came in late, my name is Beth Kitzis. I'm one of the dietitians here at Community Servings, and we are broadcasting live from the Learning Kitchen here. All right, so that looks pretty good. So usually these will take about 2 to 3 minutes per side. Go, and we'll do one more pancake while we're here. So I hope you thought or learned a little bit something useful to do with your produce. I hope you think about how much food you throw out each week, because it really does impact the earth, and it will save you money if you don't. If you use it up and use it as meals rather than throwing it in the garbage. A lot of people do composting now, and that is helpful, but it's really hard for the home person to compost all the food that they waste each day or each week. So, it is definitely helpful, but it's not the complete and utter solution to all the wasted produce. So, just buying only what you need. And when you do have produce that's going bad, think of great ways to use it up. There's so many good resources on the internet for finding out, just typing in an ingredient and looking up and seeing what you can make with it. I think this is going to be our best one. Oh, heat's high. All right, so let us know if you have a question. Oh, it looks like we do have a question, so I'm going to peek on my computer for a second and see what we have. Uh-oh, my computer went to sleep. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's see. So someone is, oh, I don't see the question. Let's see, sorry.
What can you do with overripe tomatoes?
Oh, okay. So someone is asking, what can I do with overripe tomatoes? So this would be a perfect recipe to make. Of course, you can also make tomato sauce, and if you don't feel like you're going to use the tomato sauce now, you can put that in the freezer. Another great thing to do with tomatoes as they're about to go bad is to make them into sun-dried tomatoes. And that way they, you remove all the moisture, and then you've got basically like these wrinkly little sweet tomatoes that can make a topping for a salad or pizza, or they can be tossed into pasta. So what you do is you just roast them whole, especially if they're smaller tomatoes, you roast them whole in the oven. I think at like 350 or so, maybe a little bit lower, and just let them go until they're really dried out and wrinkly, almost like you're making raisins. So that would be another thing to make with that. Yeah, tomatoes you wouldn't want to put in a smoothie, I wouldn't think, but you could also make like a vegetable juice. A lot of people like to make juices out of the, fruits and vegetables that are going bad, so that's another good one. All right, so does anyone else have any other questions? We'll give it a few minutes, but if not, I thank you for joining us today, and I hope you'll try one of our recipes. And if you have rotting produce, I hope you'll find some great things to do with them. Thank you.